Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. As you can see, my new WandaVision gear is on my body. The old WandaVision backdrop is up on the TV, so you know exactly what we're talking about. So why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in spoiler-filled into episode 4 of WandaVision, and this show, man, it just gets better and better, and the creativity behind some of the ideas and concepts that are going on in this show, and just the way that Marvel Studios is executing everything here. I mean, it is just genius level storytelling, television development. Like, I know that Falcon Winter Soldier was supposed to be the first show that we got, and I have a feeling that that's going to be very similar to, like, the Winter Soldier movie. It's going to be, like, I might be like a buddy cop show, because I can see a lot of humor and chemistry that we know already exists between Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan. But I'm so glad that WandaVision ended up being the first foray into Marvel television that we get to experience, because, like I said, man, this thing is genius. And what I love about the show, which I mentioned in my non-spoiler, which if you haven't seen the episode and you don't want anything spoiled yet, check out the non-spoiler first, watch the episode, then come back, because we're getting ready to spoil everything. So I'll give you like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, spoiler time. But like I said in my non-spoiler, I love the way that the show is functioning like a mystery movie. You know, we have 9 episodes. We've got, our first act already in the books. And much like I said in that non-spoiler, watching everything and looking at it after the 4th episode, totally understand why they sent reviewers the first 3 episodes, because that really is the first act of this bad boy. It's the act where we establish where we are, we establish our characters, we're introduced to our characters, although we know them, so we're introduced to all the characters around them. We're given all of these questions and all of these things about this mystery going, why are we in this town of Westview? Why does it function like a sitcom television? Is that like just our experience? And then we get to the end of that first episode and it looks like someone from S.W.O.R.D is monitoring what looks like a show. So why is it a sitcom? Who are all of the people inside? What is really going on? What is Wanda doing? All these things that get posed in those first 3 episodes, you need answers to some of them when you get to the second act. And we kick off our second act with some answers. And one of the things that I really am digging about the episodes is after I've been doing my reviews and then I go back on to rewatch, the title pops up. It's just episode 4 at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know why the title doesn't pop up right away, but every time I go in at 3, it's just episode 4. And then after I do my reviews, I usually see the titles. Today, I was like, let's take a look and see if the title popped up after I did my non-spoiler. And it did. And I love these titles, man. Like the first 2 episodes and the way that they tie into sitcom television, right? Like Now in Front of a Live Studio Audience was their first episode. Don't Touch That Dial, which was a big saying in the 60s with TV, because TVs had actual dials. Don't touch it. Don't change that channel. You want to stay here. Genius. When we flip over, to color, by the time we come into the 3rd episode, we get, Now in Color, which was a big thing in the 70s as televisions started to produce color. And what's great here is we break away from our sitcom. If you saw the trailer for this episode, you know that we're following Monica. And we're outside of the force field, and it's a background story. We're getting everything that was going on before and during those first 3 episodes from the outside point of view. And now we interrupt this program, which of course what was a big thing in television and still is anytime you have breaking news that cuts into whatever you're watching. And what's cool here is, like I said, we detract from that sitcom setup and being inside of this, reality that Wanda's created. We're on the outside and we're interrupting the program that we've been watching. And it's funny because when I saw the trailer, I peeped it when it dropped yesterday. I was like, "Ooh, this looks like we're on the outside of the Westview reality that we've been living in." Does that mean that this is gonna be like a fill-in, a bunch of the gaps episode? And if it is, then we're not gonna get like a traditional opening like we've been getting, like a television show opening. And that's exactly what happens here. This episode totally functions like a regular piece of Marvel content, where we get, the Marvel Studios stuff at the beginning, or rather we get a cold open, and then what should be the opening theme song, we get like the Marvel opening, credit bit. And, the whole time we're in widescreen. We're not, shrunk down to the 3x4 that we've been viewing everything in up to this point, because that was the ratio for television through the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I love this episode because we get to follow around, like I said, Monica Rambeau, who of course is played by Tiana Prince, who I've been saying now for the last 2 weeks since she's been introduced, and we've gotten to spend a little bit more time with her. She's fantastic, and she really, really shines in this episode. I love everything that they do with her, specifically starting at the front. This episode starts right after the snap, and the only thing that we've seen post-snap was, of course, all the people starting to materialize in Spider-Man Far From Home. Like the basketball game's going on, and all of a sudden the band pops up, and people are colliding into each other. What's cool here is we are zoomed in tight, man, so we actually see the dust reform Monica Rambeau, and she's sitting in a hospital. But what's cool about it is, even though it looks exactly like the dust, kind of flakes that we saw in, Infinity War and Endgame. Well, I guess just Infinity War. We didn't see any dust in Endgame. But, we did, when Thanos gets dusted. Duh. Man, my brain's all over the place. But the way that it comes together very much evoked the probably most iconic House of M image, which is that shot of Wanda like this, and like the pieces of her fitting back together, almost kind of like a Tetris puzzle. Here, the dust flakes, but that Tetris puzzle, very much like in the closing credits when we get like all the cool things that are moving around, very similar to that image. But just the way that Monica's face comes back together, I was like, oh man, that like makes me think of that image of Wanda breaking apart in the House of M run in the comics. So I love the way that they're able to layer just little nods like that into these episodes, the things that inspired and that this material comes from. But like I said, we're inside a hospital, and what we find out is that 5 years prior to this moment in time, Maria, Monica's mom, is in the hospital with cancer. And what's cool is, as Monica is being brought back together, we're hearing, and the only reason I know this is what we're hearing is I always have the subtitles up on the TV. We're hearing conversation and lines from Captain Marvel. So we hear Monica, we hear Maria, and we hear Captain Marvel herself. And then, Monica finishes forming, and she realizes that her mom isn't in the hospital bed. So she gets up and is just very confused at everything that's going on. And as she's moving through the hospital, you're seeing more and more people starting to come back. So it wasn't all at once, which is very much how it looked in Spider-Man. You're just kind of getting, it's just being brought back together almost instantaneously. But what you find out is that when Monica went in, Maria was going in for surgery. That surgery was successful. Then she disappears. Maria did not disappear. So she lives her life for 2 years, and then the cancer comes back and she dies, and Monica comes back 3 years after that. Now, we don't get to spend a lot of time, obviously, because it's only like I think this one's like a 34-minute episode. But so we don't like spend time with her grappling with everything. We just jump right to her working at S.W.O.R.D, which was something I really dug, because obviously, being that this is functioning much more like a regular Marvel property, as we go to different places, we get, in the corner, like we've seen specifically in like the Captain America movies, like the date and time and like the place that we're at. So when we go to S.W.O.R.D, it says, Sentient World Observation and Response Department, which confirms that, Topps Marvel trading card app game, where we said that was the first time we'd ever seen the name like that, because prior to Sentient Weapon, it was Sentient World. And what's cool is when Monica gets back, she goes to go in, and her badge doesn't work. Security stops her. She's like, "I work here. I'm here for a meeting." And then director, I believe it's Hayward, who is played by Josh Stamberg. Director Hayward of S.W.O.R.D comes up, and he's like, this is Captain Monica Rambeau. She was already a S.W.O.R D agent. She was up in space, which is where S.W.O.R D originated from with the sentient world observation. What we kind of figure out is that, when Hayward is, taking her around the facility, he's like, we now work in technology and AI, and producing all of these things. It's like, well, it does also say observation and response on that door as well, like not just sentient weapons. Observation and response to sentient weapons means, probably observing superheroes. But the way that Monica says it, it makes you go, it probably was Sentient World originally. Maria actually built S.W.O.R D from the bottom up, so probably working with Fury while Fury was doing, what are the words? S.H.I.E.L.D. While Fury was doing S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff, at some point Maria started to build S.W.O.R.D. For that space station, most likely that we saw Fury on at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ooh, brain's not totally clicking. So it's cool to kind of see them walk around and kind of have that like nod to, S.W.O.R.D used to be called something different pre-snap, and now it's this, because two different swords, exist in the S.W.O.R D from the comics and this S.W.O.R D, two different things. Hinted, they didn't say Sentient World, but certainly hinted that it was probably renamed. And then Hayward obviously becoming the director. Even Monica's like, look, I'm not here to run the show. I'm here to be an agent. And she gets sent to New Jersey because the FBI has an informant, or a witness, rather, that's in protection, disappears. Just poof, gone. So when she gets to Jersey, Jimmy Woo is there, along with a couple local law enforcements, and he's kind of saying, I had a witness that was stationed here. Seemed like they flew the coop this morning. I got here, and these guys are saying that Westview doesn't exist, even though they're looking right at Westview in front of them. And what we kind of learned through the conversation that happens there is that whenever Wanda did what Wanda did, anybody who wasn't in Westview but was tied to Westview, so family members, friends that are on the outside, forget that those people even exist. Like when the FBI starts contacting, people who are related or close to this witness, they say that person doesn't exist. These two cops from Eastview, New Jersey, say Westview doesn't exist, which is funny because, like I said, New Jersey, I geek out anytime New Jersey pops up, and it pops up a lot in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I love that we're based again in Jersey here, and I love that the line Westview doesn't exist is in there, because as far as I know, and as far as Maps tells me, there is no Westview or Eastview, New Jersey. However, there is an Eastview and Westview inside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and for everybody on the outside, Westview doesn't exist. So clearly, whatever Wanda has done has also manipulated the minds of people on the outside, as well as just turning people or things that come in to the inside into, different things. What we find out is that S.W.O.R.D is called in because they want drones. Monica actually asks Randall Parks Wu, why are we out here? Why aren't we inside Westview? He's like, there's you feel it, don't you? Like, we're not supposed to go in there. So they send one of these drones. And they've sent multiple drones, which means we could have multiple toy helicopters inside the world, because we see a drone go in first, and then when Monica sees like the energy field is there, she starts to kind of touch it, and she gets sucked in. So she was not part of Wanda's original construction, which is why, some of the people, when she's starting to slip on her control of things, and people have some sort of memory, it's like she wasn't here. Like, she's not supposed to be here. Because she wasn't. She got sucked in and becomes part of that reality, which appears to be what's happening everywhere. And as they sent more and more drones, one of those drones falls into Wanda's yard, and that's the one that we see that's become a toy helicopter. And what's funny is that the drones while they do have some red and gold, it doesn't look exactly like what it looks like when it lands in there. And later on in the episode, they're like, why did you colorize it? And they're like, it just happened. So no answers to the colorization, but clearly something that people notice. And what happens is once Monica gets pulled in, whole operation ramps up, right? Because they got to figure out what's going on here. And we see all these different scientists from all these different divisions, tech and space and, science things. And one of those people is, of course, good old Darcy Lewis, played by Kat Dennings. And what's awesome is when she arrives, somebody kind of mentions to her, like, oh, hey, Miss Lewis. And she's like, it's Dr. Lewis. So the last time we saw Darcy, while she was still an intern, she's now completed everything she's had to complete to become a full-on doctor. And she, of course, is going to be the one that starts piecing things together, because she is very, very smart, albeit, she doesn't always come off that way in the Thor movies, because she's kind of she's very much her own person. It fits Kat Dennings perfectly. I love when she plays Darcy. But she is clearly very, very smart. And because these things kind of disappeared in there, they're trying to figure out what's going on. So we're seeing, as they're bringing in all these scientists and Darcy and people are starting to piece things together, we're seeing, Wu and Darcy identifying who these people are. So we see, like, Mr. and Mrs. Hart actually have real names. They have New Jersey licenses, and everything's they're starting to build together, their police board. And while we're seeing them do all these things, Darcy's starting to look at different stuff, and she actually refers to cosmic microwave background radiation. There's lots of it emanating from this thing. And one of the people she's talking to is like, well, we've been told it's clear, like, it's safe. And she's like, it is for now, but there's also some other sort of frequency. And immediately she recognizes that it's an older frequency and gets like a monitor that's old school, and she starts dialing, and the show that we've been watching starts to come into vision. She's like, we need old TVs, not flat screen. Give me a TV that's not flat, which I love. Basically, what we've been watching, much like we saw at the end of the first episode, where S.W.O.R.D is kind of monitoring, they're monitoring this television show, and they're watching what we're watching. So no reason, we don't know why, but whatever Wanda is somehow allowing to be broadcasted out, and maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's a safety net, maybe it's her way of calling out, allowing some sort of a feed to come through. Maybe it's not, but however they've been able to figure out that's what they're watching. And as we start to monitor, what they're watching, we start to see that they see some of the things that we've seen. They send in a person in a full hazmat suit. So another kind of hint or nod to AIM, which, those outfits are very much hazmat suitish. And one of the other things that we found out while they've been investigating is it's a 5-mile radius around the center point of Westview, and it's in a hexagonal shape. One of the things Jimmy Woo puts up on the board is like, why is it a hexagon? Why sitcoms? Is Vision alive? And it's one of those things where we just keep getting these hints to AIM. That their symbol is a hexagon. The hazmat suit. But AIM is nowhere involved. It's not like a division. The S.W.O.R.D, we haven't heard any mentions of AIM. The hexagon could just be completely random, or it could maybe tie into AIM for all we know, or at least what I think is Strucker somewhere, pulling some strings somewhere. But it's kind of cool as you're kind of watching them piece all of this together, and then that guy in a hazmat suit, we see him going through the sewers, and he actually takes off for the sewers before we even get to Dottie breaking the glass with, Detective Wu trying to reach out to Wanda. And, one of those things that does get answered is it is indeed Detective Wu. We see that, if you weren't sure, just on the voice alone. And it must take the dude a long time to navigate the sewers to get in. And as we see him get closer, we can kind of see that energy field that looks like television static. He starts to go in, and they have a tether on him. And naturally that tether comes off and they pull back and he's not there. But even the end of the tether, the piece that goes in with him, also changes, right? Like he turns into the Beekeeper outfit. the tether turns into like an old school, back in the day there were jump ropes that were made with a bunch of, well, clearly a string, and then a bunch of plastic pieces that were on it that could slide around a little bit. Red, white, and blue. So we see this red, white, and blue. I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. Like, I remember when those jump ropes were a thing, because they made they made a cool noise when they hit the ground. But literally anything that goes in, and apparently anything that comes out, much like we saw it with Monica's character when she does crash at the end of episode 3, they're permanently changed, apparently. Like, it comes back, and that's what it is. It doesn't become a rope anymore. And while we're watching that, before we even get there, we know that moment where Wu tries to get through and it breaks, we see the glass, then Wanda goes and gets the thing. While Darcy's watching it, it looks like the blip that we see from Vision at the end of episode 3, right? Where he comes in and he's like, something here is wrong, right? And then he just jumps right back. That's exactly what Darcy sees. She doesn't see everything that we saw. What's cool is later on in the episode where the blip happened for us, we actually finally get to see what happens inside. So it's kind of one of these, like, even the show, inside the context of the show, has broken out of the television show. And anytime it's broken out of the television show for us, nobody but us gets to see that. It is the blip that we saw in episode 3 that's being transmitted to the outside. And Darcy even goes, somebody's censoring the feed. And I was reading online last week, some people theorizing that maybe the feed is being censored by AIM or Hydra, or somebody can actually control what's being sent out. Based on what we get to by the end of the episode, I think it's still Wanda. And we will certainly get there. But I love seeing that, like, the episode, if there's a break in the episode, that's not what's going out. Nobody is seeing that. It looks exactly like what we saw with Vision. And as the Beekeeper, in particular, comes in, and we see, Wanda just says no, and then we jump back and we see, like, that kind of a blip happens there, where, like, you don't see the Beekeeper at all. Just that kind of, like, brings you right back. But we don't see what happens to the Beekeeper after Wanda rewinds. He doesn't show back up outside. So I don't know what that means. That was one of the first things I was like, okay, that jump happened. Where's the Beekeeper? Like, if she rewound it, did he go back in, or did he just go back into the sewer? And who knows? I did think that was kind of interesting. But then we get this really wonderful moment. Kat Dennings and Randall Park are just wonderful in the episode. They both play those roles so well, and getting to watch them play together is a lot of fun, specifically when Wu comes in at one point and Kat's just sitting there eating popcorn watching the show, and, like, when they have the babies, or the end of one of the episodes when they kiss. I think it was right after she gets pregnant. Like, Kat Dennings starts to get, like, emotional. She's like, I'm invested in this show. And I love that the MCU actual reality, the only way that you can see it is what we're watching. It makes everything real. Like, it's not like we're just getting this television show concept because that's how they're going to tell the story. Like, that is actually what's going on. And those moments are happening exactly as we're seeing them happen. And getting to kind of watch them watch the show is a lot of fun. But as they're watching, you see that they're both eventually, Wu sits down, they're, like, both like this watching the show. You hear, because they see Monica, and now you're kind of trying to spot and figure out, that's what leads them to reaching out to Wanda, because they didn't know that Wanda was in there. When they first said the witness that was in Westview, was like, oh, maybe they stuck Wanda there for something, and while she was there, this happened. She was never there that we know of, so she came to Westview for what reason? Who knows? I think that witness, whoever that witness is going to end up being a key piece to this puzzle. And I'm very intrigued to see who the witness is. And I hope that we get an answer to that. But as they're watching, they see, Monica say Ultron. And Kat was like, did she just say Ultron? And that's where, what they're watching, you see that blip happens. And she's like, wait, no. And they rewind, and it doesn't exist. We, of course, saw some of what happened on the inside, and what they do is they do jump in to finally show us all of that, and they show what happens after Wanda is like, who are you? I don't know, I don't believe you, you don't belong here, and Monica clearly is gaining some recognition of some of what's going on, and she's trying to calm Wanda down, and Wanda, you start to see the red glow in her hand. She's like, you don't belong here, and you need to leave. And she's like, and it's not a magic trick. She freaking sends Monica through the walls of the house, through the wall, the concrete wall that's between the other house, out into the open, and then through everything. And as that happens, we see her kind of start to come back to some semblance of even like a different consciousness, right? Like when you said Ultron that you don't belong here, I know what I'm doing, I'm gonna throw you out. And then it's the, oh no, what did I do? We can't have this. There's almost like a bit of panic in Wanda as she reconstructs the house so that it doesn't look like anything happened. And in that minute, I was sitting there going, Wanda's in full control of everything, exactly like I thought. Like, there is nobody that has helped create, maybe, like I said, Hydra or AIM, maybe it was their idea, maybe there was some sort of influence, but nobody is influencing. Like, I even think, like, the person that's changing the feed, or censoring the feed that we're getting, isn't someone from Hydra or AIM. It's all Wanda, and just the way that she responds, the way that she even says to Vision at one point, like, I'm in control. It's kind of this nod of, like, she is fully aware of what she's doing, and whatever it is that she's done, she's also kind of wiped her mind so that she doesn't have to feel that pain or experience what real reality is. And I think that's more of an answer. That's probably the biggest answer that we get in this episode, is that this is Wanda. It is all Wanda, and that's exactly what Monica says when she's on the ground. She's like, it's Wanda. It's all Wanda. Like, Wanda is doing all of this. And you kind of sit there at the end of the episode. To me, I was like, yeah, that just confirms to me that anything that we're seeing or anything that's being manipulated or done is being done by Wanda. She doesn't necessarily always know, or she's not necessarily, I think, controlling everything that's going on. I think she's wiped all those minds, and as, like I said, she starts to lose control. That even one of the things that Darcy kind of questions, like, why is there color? Or Jimmy Woo questions, like, why is there color all of a sudden? Like, did you guys colorize this? I still think that's her kind of losing her control of her powers, and when she is kind of out of control, right? Like, we see that whole conversation with Monica and her throwing her through the house. Well, during that whole time, we saw the other thing that was going on, which was the conversation with Vision, Herb, and Agnes. And in that time where she kind of broke, the people inside, they understand something. So I think some of them might be agents because they know what's going on to a degree. Like, she doesn't belong here. Maybe they're just regular old people. But when she loses that control, I think that is why things became color. And the fact that, like, she is in control, but only so much. Like, that control is starting to slip away from her. And I love that the episode, as we interrupt this program, because it does. It completely breaks away. It answers some of those questions. We know what the actual outfit was the Beekeeper had on. We know what the helicopter was now. We know for sure whose voice it was. We know how Monica got in. We know that S.W.O.R.D had, at least to our knowledge, no knowledge of Wanda being in Westview, no knowledge of this, whatever this is, being a thing. So they are not connected to Wanda in any way here. And it wasn't them, like, monitoring Wanda, and that's why they're there. Some other person, I'm telling you, that witness is going to be important. I don't know who it could be, but whoever it is, if they reveal that person, and maybe it's Agnes, maybe she's the witness. Maybe it is Agatha Harkness. But whoever is, I don't even know if that would make sense, but I think whoever that witness is important, I hope. But yeah, it's all Wanda. And I love that this episode, broke away, like we interrupt this program, broke away from our programming and did a Marvel thing, right? Like, no theme song, no any kind of hint of sitcom reality going on unless you were watching what we've already seen. And I love that you get some answers and some more questions, and now I just want to dive more and more into this mystery. I love what we're getting, man. I love the concept of the show. I love the way that it's building. I love that it is functioning full on like a mystery. Tease us with questions, tease us with some answers, but I still don't really know what's going on. Like, it's all just thoughts and theories and logical guesses. And they really are only revealing what they want to reveal to us. And I love it. It's so damn good, and I cannot wait for next week. So I'm gonna shut up, man, because I've been blabbering. I'm talking way too much sometimes during these spoilers. But this show is so freaking good, man. Like, I am so much like Darcy. I'm fully invested in this, man, and I can't wait to see us jump back. And that was one of the other things. Like, when I saw that trailer, I started thinking, I was like, wait, this is 9 episodes, and if you go through the full-on decades, right, you had 50s, your 60s, your 70s, the 3 that we've seen. We still need the 80s, 90s, theoretically, the thousands and the tens, and that would only get us 7 episodes if you went all the way through there. I could just see it being sitcoms in the thousands in general. The general vibe, I think, of sitcoms in the last 10 years has all been pretty similar. So maybe it's just, or in the last 20 years rather, I feel like it's kind of similar. So I don't know if they'll go all the way there, but regardless, most we could get to is 7. The least I think we'd see is 6, or maybe 5. They could stop after the 90s, I suppose. But it's one of those where you're going to have extra episodes. So there's going to be things that are not television. This episode, I think when we get down to the last 2 episodes, I don't think those will be sitcoms anymore. I think those are going to be full on, that war, right? Like Vision says, this is our home, we should fight for it. And that's the other thing, too, that I love, is when we get to see what was going on with Wanda, why Vision was talking to Herb and Agnes. When Vision comes back in, clearly, Wanda's brain is, when she kind of gets broken out of her reality, you can see that things are broken, because when Vision comes in, this is the creepiest thing they've done in the whole show. No pupils. He's completely black and white again, and that hole from Thanos ripping the stone out of his head is there. She sees the dead version of Vision, and it disturbs her. You see Wanda full on get disturbed. Liz Olsen is so freaking good in this show, as is Paul Bettany. But when she gets kind of disturbed, she's like, oh no, I can't see that, and it takes her a minute, and then Vision looks like Vision. Oh, dude, all of the stuff they are doing in the show is so freaking good, and I like I said, we're probably gonna get that war that they talked about, man. This is our home. We gotta fight for it. It's going to be a battle, and that battle is going to roll us into Doctor Strange. That's one of the other things I saw this week, is that there was mention, I don't know if it was, I can't remember if it was Bettany or if it was Olsen, but there was an interview somewhere, I want to say it was Bettany, or maybe it was one of the producers of the show, where they said there is one character that they are holding real close to the vest, that's a big deal that they haven't mentioned. So will we see Benedict Cumberbatch show up? I think it's not even the cast, because I've theorized, I think that we're going to see Quicksilver probably at some point in this. It'd be wonderful to see Aaron Taylor Johnson come back. But we also know that Evan Peters is in the show. And when I'd heard the casting, I was just like, oh, I love Evan Peters. Bring him into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not thinking fully oh yeah, he's also the other Quicksilver. So maybe he comes in as Quicksilver here. We know that we're going to get some of these other Universal characters coming in. I wonder if that's who he's playing, but I don't think that's who the big mystery person is, because I don't think it's someone that's been announced as far as being in the cast. So it could be Benedict Cumberbatch. Maybe it could be Brie Larson. Maybe we'll get Captain America, being that Monica is tied in here, and it's an Avenger on the inside, and Captain Marvel would know her, and Monica's now back on the outside, so maybe it's her. I'm interested, man. I'm interested, even in the things that we're not getting, the little things that they drop, interviews or bits or trailers that we're getting. Everything just sucks me more and more into the show, and I absolutely adore it. So there you go, man. Those are all of my spoiler thoughts after episode 4. Oh, the show is so good. I just could talk about it forever, but I'm going to stop talking so that you can talk. I want to know your thoughts, man. Theories. Things you loved about this episode. Other things that you picked up. I didn't pick up a ton of Easter eggs in this one. As I only watched it the once. I was just like, I want to sit down and talk. Get these up and going. And there's a whole bunch of stuff going on today, man. This is big. So we're going to start seeing Fridays mean something again in the world of cinema and television, and we're getting drops, and there's another movie I gotta go watch. So I've only watched this one once, so if you got other Easter eggs that I missed, please point them out, call them out down below. Like I said, your theories, things you loved about this episode. How much are you loving Teyonah Parris right now? What do you think Wanda is doing? Is she fully in control? Is there anybody from the outside? What are all of these hints and nods and clues that seem to keep pointing to AIM mean? Anything you're thinking about WandaVision, down below in the comments section. Go spoiler heavy, baby. Go have all the world. I look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man every Friday morning for WandaVision. You want to be here for anything we're talking about, movies, television, trailers. You haven't yet, and you like what we're doing here, I urge you to come join C-Maniac Nation by jumping over there, hitting that subscribe button, hitting that little bell if you want those alerts. If not, I hope we get to see you next week, talk some more, and maybe we can slowly win you over. But whatever you decide to do, man, I just hope that you're enjoying this, and I hope you'll engage with me down below. And until next week or next time that we're on, I got, like I said, other things to get to today. I, of course, have been the C-Man for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down, and I am signing off. Well, that's all live and breathe. You still here? Check out a video like this one or this one and hit the subscribe button so you can get alerts and check out everything the C-Man's got at the Cinema Sit Down.